Good afternoon. I'm Joe Scarano from Arrays, and today we'll be covering ways that as a nonprofit organization, you can become more sustainable through transparency and accountability. We appreciate your time today and hope that today's webinar will show you better ways that you can help your nonprofit organization and tools available from Arrays that will help you become more sustainable and transparent. So why is transparency so important to nonprofit organizations? Because as a nonprofit organization, you're different from a for-profit organization because it's not about making a profit. It's about fulfilling your mission. But in order to fulfill your mission, you need to be accountable to your funding sources because you're going to have donations and revenue that comes into your organization, typically with strings attached. Those strings make it imperative for you to become more transparent and more accountable. So the information that you get, you need to make sure that you are demonstrating proper accountability, providing information as to how money was collected, how it was spent, and what services were funded by the money that you receive. So transparency typically becomes a problem when, or it becomes an issue when there's a problem. So there could be a misappropriation of funds, potentially a scandal in the sector, or pressure from regulators, whether it's the IRS or your funding sources, because you're not showing them the information that they need for you to become more accountable. So you want to make sure that you have procedures in place, policies in place, and the tools in place that will make you more transparent to your funding sources. So the 4 keys to transparency and the components of transparency is data, collecting information and making it available and accessible for public scrutiny. Justification. You need to provide clear reasoning for the actions and decisions, including the actions that you do not adopt, so that they may be reasonably questioned. So justification for everything that your organization does and does not do. You need to make sure that you're compliant in all of your funding regulations and compliant in fulfilling your mission. And if there are any shortfalls, that you take the necessary steps to enforce and remedy those shortfalls. The keys to achieving accountability: proper stewardship of donor funds, ensure that the funds that are donated to your organization are protected and used efficiently. You want to implement management practices to ensure long-term survival of your organization. And this is something that has to be adopted by your entire staff. You need to have an open mind of communications with your donors and funding sources and constituents. And having the right system in place will help you achieve your accountability. So revenue transparency and accountability. Nonprofits need to identify 3 characteristics for all of the revenue coming into the organization. Who is providing the revenue? Your funding source. What type of income is it? Is it a grant? Is it program services? Is it a donation? Is it contract for services? And why are they providing you the money? What are you going to be using this money for which particular program or purpose? And typically a nonprofit organization has multiple whys. They might have multiple programs, within those programs, multiple funding sources or projects or departments. And the same thing is true when it comes to expenses. All of your expenses need to be identified, and each of the 3 characteristics for expenses needs to be followed. Who is providing the funds for the expense, the funding source funding your particular expenses? What type of expense is it? Salaries, rent, travel, supplies. And why is this expense incurred? Is it program services or part of your support services such as management general and or fundraising? You typically don't get money to help fundraise, but your fundraising expenses need to be separated and properly allocated for your functional expense report. And like revenue, there are typically multiple Ys for all of your revenue. So having the right system in place will help you become more transparent and accountable. You need to have proper segregation of financial activity by donor designation and functional area. So that takes care of the why and what of the revenue. You need to make sure that you don't have to export data to external spreadsheets for generating your reports. You want to be able to properly allocate all of your revenue and expenses to your funds, your programs, and your specific funding sources, departments, or sites. You want to make sure that if you are receiving grant funds, that you are reporting back to your funding sources, your grantors, making sure that the money that they're providing from the grant is used for its designated purpose. And of course, you need to have strict internal controls to maintain your data integrity. So a proper system will help you achieve better transparency and accountability. So this is a real-world example of an organization that requires transparency and accountability for all of their revenue and expenses. This is based on a real FastGo Online user. The names have been changed to protect the innocent. So Appleseed Ministry, they have missionaries all around the world, and each missionary has donors who donate on behalf of their mission. So the ministry solicits donations on behalf of their missionaries. The missionaries themselves solicit donations to help fund their mission. So they need to track all the donations that come in on behalf of their missionaries and projects and programs around the world. They need to track to make sure that each expense is credited and expensed to the appropriate missionary in various countries. They need to be able to send receipts to the donors, giving detail as to how their donation was applied to the appropriate mission. And each of their missionaries around the world wants to be able to pull up data. They need to know how much money has been donated on my behalf. How much money have I spent, and do I have extra funds left in my account? So to take a look at how that's actually used in the FastGo Online system, we've set up an example of how to use the system. And so our example is the Central America mission. This particular mission is active this entire calendar year. The goal is to raise $150,000. We've contacted 1,500 people, so we're able to track the effectiveness of our appeal. What percentage of return have we gotten from the number of people that we've contacted, along with the average donation? Now, this particular mission appeal is to help fund an orphan care facility in both Guatemala and Nicaragua. So there are designated gifts that come in. There's children's medical supplies. There's money donated specifically for orphan care. Someone might sponsor a child. We receive in-kind donations. There's general missionary support. We have a sponsorship in Nicaragua, and then we have donors who might help fund the travel for the missionaries who are going to either Guatemala or Nicaragua. Each of these individual gifts is linked to a specific GL account code in our accounting system. So there's a seamless integration between both fundraising and accounting, and we have what we refer to as a funnel effect, where we're able to track individual gift designations, yet those gifts funnel into the same general income account in certain instances in accounting. So the donations for orphan care are going to the unrestricted fund, the orphan care program, Central America Mission donations is the account. We have money that's going for child sponsorship. So once again, it's the same fund, program, and funding source, yet the GL account code is different, so we can separate sponsorship revenue from general donation revenue. So we set up the appeal, what the money, what we intend to raise the money, and the methods and approach to raising the funds. We've identified the designations for the gifts and the GL account code in accounting where everything will be posted. So when it comes time to entering a donation, we go to Receipts, enter a donor name. We can put in a reference. Let's say this was a $1,000 donation. We can track if this particular gift was solicited by someone. We can say that Julia helped solicit this gift, and maybe it was an honorarium or memorial gift given in memory of John. We're going to be sending George our custom template for the Central America donation receipt. So here we could enter the appeal, and now we can select from any one of our assigned gifts for the appeal. So we can say that this is for orphan care, and we can even track the name of the child that they're helping to sponsor with the orphan care. I can enter a new donation, enter a new donor, reference. If it was a credit card, you can put credit card. So here, it brings up the default information from the previous donation, but in this example, Barbara's a longtime donor, and she always wants her gift to be allocated to multiple account codes. So we've preset a distribution, so it's going to automatically take her $500 and allocate it to all of these areas. She prefers to receive a printed receipt, so we're going to save this transaction, and we go to Receipts to Print, and we've got the gifts that were entered today. If we have receipts that are ready to be emailed, we can globally email receipts. So these are receipts that could be emailed. So we can customize the receipt. We can select which receipts we're going to print. We can get a preview of the gift. This is the receipt that's going to go to the donor, breaking down their donation and how it was allocated. This was for a gift that was for orphan care, sponsoring Lucy as a child. And this is the total year-to-date donations for the gift. This is totally user definable. So we can say that we printed these two. We can just click OK to print. We can download a file to do a mail merge for labels or envelopes. We're just going to click OK that they printed successfully and they're removed from the print queue. We can do the same thing for emailing. We can select the gifts to email, select a default template, and email those gifts. We take a look at the donor record. We can filter this list. We could take a look at the actions that shows that we sent an acknowledgement letter today to George, that we printed a donor gift receipt for his $1,000 donation. We could take a look at his summary of giving or his history. And both the history and summary are user permission. So if you have people that are working in your system that you do not want them to see donor sensitive data, you can limit access by user permissions. So we have those donations. We go into accounting now, and those transactions are ready to be deposited in accounting. I could drill down to the transaction and see the effect of that transaction in accounting and the GL account codes that are automatically posted to that account. Select my gifts to deposit, select my bank account. If I have multiple bank accounts, make my deposit, print my deposit report, and make my deposit. Now, it just so happens that one of our missionaries in Central America is Frank Parson. Now Frank is set up in the system so he can log on anywhere. He's got an internet connection from his Mac, from his PC, from his iPad, even from his phone if he wants, and pull up data that he has been assigned to. So he only has access to one report in accounting. It's called the activity report. So what this report does is allow Frank to pull up to see all of his activities for a specific period of time. So what I'm going to do, and I can do this because I'm what's called a super user, is I'm going to become Frank. So I'm no longer signed on as me. I'm signed on as Frank. So in accounting, if I go to reports, I can pull up my restricted activity report, put in my date range. So I want to know my fiscal year to date, what's in my account, and I pull up the account that's assigned to me, and I could get a preview of this report to see exactly how I'm doing this year. So I can see that I have $32,000 that's been raised on my behalf this fiscal year. I spent $9,000. I've got $23,000 left in my account. Now, if I wanted to send thank you letters or emails to everyone who donated on my behalf, while I'm in the system, I can switch over to fundraising, again, as Frank, and you can see I don't have much in the way of access here. If I go to reports, the only thing that I can pull up here are reports that are assigned to me. So I've already sent out thank you letters up until December, so now I want to pull up the report for the last quarter. And those are the donations that came in through the 6th on my behalf. So I actually need to sign out now and sign in as Joe so I have full access. So in accounting, with proper rights, I can pull up a report in accounting for fiscal year to date, the missionary income and expense report. So this particular report only is including my orphan care program. It doesn't include my other programs. So I could pull up, I could just do organization totals only to see how my mission program is doing. And if I need to, I could also give any other missionary who needs access to this report can pull up this report. So that's a way that a missionary organization or a foreign relief organization is able to track the donations they come in, the donor designations, and provide information both to the donor and to their missionaries how much money is raised on their behalf and how much money is left in each of their funds, so they're able to demonstrate proper accountability and the fulfillment of their mission. Next example is a community service-based organization. They provide different services such as an after-school program, a daycare program, and an education program. Each of those programs has multiple funding sources: local, state, county, federal funding sources, or contracts. So they need to be able to track each of their program activities and the individual funding sources. And of course, they also need to generate FASB compliant reports that group all of their program activities together to create their functional expense report, summarizing all of their programs and support services for management in general and fundraising. So in FastGo Online, the way that's handled is with the chart of accounts, we're able to define account number segments that define our funds, and you can have an unlimited number of funds. Each fund becomes a company within your company, you could have its own, each fund will have its own excess or deficiency, its own P&L, its own year-end closing entry, and its own balance sheet. And the system automatically tracks inter-fund transactions and due from other fund entries. So as a whole, each fund will self-balance. This allows you to track your program activity. Then we have our funding sources, and then our line items. Now, there are additional layers that you can add, but this is an example of what we refer to as a 4-tier or 4-segment account structure. So when it comes time to generating our financial statements, we're going to stick with the fiscal year, and I'm going to pull up the program for Penny Road Child Care Programs, a summary of all of their programs. So this just shows their child care programs in summary. Then it breaks it down at the fund level. Then it's broken down by after school, daycare, and education. So let's say we needed a breakdown of the after school program. We can pull up that report. And it's pulling up just the after school program broken down by funding source. We have a State Department of Health and Human Services grant, an after school grant, a grant from OMRDD, and a federal grant. And then there's a private foundation grant to fund this program. When it comes time to generate a budget to actual for our funding sources, we can pull up for the current fiscal year our unrestricted after school State Department of Health and Human Services grant. So we're able to enter a budget by the lowest common denominator, the line item within the grant, within the program, within the fund. And your budget is broken down on a monthly basis. When you enter a budget, you can enter the full budget, and it automatically divides it by 12. Or I can go into each monthly bucket. Now this seems kind of tedious to do this, so we give you the ability to export your budget to Excel, work with the budget in Excel, generate your formulas, and then import the budget back in. When it comes time to printing your budget reports, you can do budget comparison, you can do year-to-date, you can do current period and year-to-date, and if necessary, you can report on cross-fiscal years for grants that don't fall within your organization's fiscal year. So it's actually pulling the budget data for 2 fiscal years for 1 grant period and the actual for the period of the grant. So that's the way our community service-based organizations are able to easily track each of their funding sources for each of their programs, and then consolidate everything that's necessary to generate their FASB compliant reports. So FastGo Online is a true software as a service, multi-tenant solution that does it all for nonprofits. It is the only single source solution that seamlessly integrates in a single database nonprofit fund accounting, fundraising, and payroll in a single solution. Our company, Arrays, was actually founded by a group of CPAs over 30 years ago. So we've been at this for a real long time. So we have a real in-depth understanding of the day-to-day challenges that you face as fiscal directors, as development directors, as executive directors for your nonprofit. So 100% of our focus is providing software solutions to the nonprofit industry. And our support staff is also comprised of CPAs Some of us are no longer actives. We have to kind of put that in as a caveat. But we were practicing CPAs at one time and accountants who've worked in the nonprofit industry. Our users run the gamut from every imaginable type of 501c 3, 4, and 5 nonprofits, and also government agencies. We have quite a few small municipalities because the government regulations are very similar to nonprofits when it comes to tracking their funds. So you can go back to Arrays Online at the end of this webinar and sign up for a free, no obligation 30-day free trial. There's actually two things that we provide in our free trial. You could opt in for a free trial where we'll help you get up and running with your company data and provide you with 1 hour of one-on-one training to help you get up and running with that 30-day free trial. Or you could sign up for a demo version which has no limitation on you evaluating the demo version because it already has data. You log into an existing company and work with the existing company, and you can get a good feel for how it works, entering transactions, generating reports without having to invest time in trying to set up your company.
Sign up for a trial version today